So down to the lovely issue of fluoridation. When you're finished, Councillor Cox here.
Thank you. Got a few questions for you, Gary, on this one, just some things that have come to me since the workshop. So how many water treatment plants do we actually have? Because I know you indicated that it maybe there's 2 more in this area where we're being mandated that may also need attention of the same nature. But how many in the whole district are there?
It's 9.
9.
Yeah. So we've got a range of plants across the district. So we have what we call a distributed network, and we have plants scattered through the district servicing the different areas, and there's some interconnectivity. So the area we're talking about here in terms of Waihi Beach, Kati, there's 4 different bores or treatment areas that supply that area.
Yeah.
And so to be effective in terms of the fluoridation, you need all 4 to have it implemented, and that's been our current discussions with the ministry. And so we're expecting that direction to come through.
So do we know why we were one of 14 councils that were directed to do this, given that only 21 councils currently in New Zealand actually have fluoride in their water?
We understand it's from their health statistics and the deprivation indexes, but essentially they've chosen the 14 from their I guess figures they've got and the data they have, and they've determined this is where it's going to be most effective.
Okay, because I've got evidence that contradicts that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Granger.
Thank you, sir. I would like to know how we get on with the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act 1996, where it says in Section 7, all persons exercising functions, powers and duties under this Act, including but not limited to functions, powers and duties under some sections, shall take into account the need for caution in maintaining adverse effects where there is scientific and technical uncertainty about those effects. And the effects are any potential or probable effect, any positive or adverse effect, any temporary or permanent effect, any past, present or future effect, any acute or chronic effect, and any cumulative effect which arises over time in combination with other effects. So we know there's a heck of a lot of uncertainty and scientific uncertainty and technical uncertainty about the effects of the toxin of fluoride on people. So are we square with this act if we go ahead?
So there'll be 2 parts to that. One is from the public health perspective. We're not the experts in that, the ministry is, and they have the experts that provide them the information to make this decision. So they would take that into account. The second part for us is health and safety, about how we operate those plants when the chemicals are in place and the need to protect our workers. So those are probably the 2 parts to it, but in terms of the public health and adding it to water supplies, that's a question for the ministry.
But we are the ones that would be liable under the Health Hazardous Substances Act for doing it.
Okay, Councillor Henry.
There's something about this that doesn't ring true for me, and I am currently looking at option 2 that I would propose that we would follow. I do realise that there's an implication to the council if we do not follow that line, and I had asked for what would be an expected kind of cost if we did go down that line, but yet it has not been forthcoming.
10,000 a day.
200,000 and 200.
10,000 a day.
10,000 a day. Okay. So for one, if it's to do with people's health, and in particularly probably children's health, why isn't it mandated across the whole district? That seems very strange. The health of people's teeth does not begin with fluoride. It begins with dental hygiene. And So I just cannot, oh, the other thing too is, as Councillor Granger said, that when that is in the system, it is almost impossible to filter out if you choose not to have it. It doesn't filter out. And we do not really know the health implications on that. When we grew up as kids, we drank the water from the river and our mother made us have fluoride tablets. I didn't always take them. My teeth aren't as good as my brothers and sisters. But so I'm not happy. So I will stick with 2. If anyone else feels the same, they can support me.
I'll just comment that I know this is a very emotive topic, but I was explained to me recently by a lady I met who is a dentist and very involved in dentistry, and it was explained that fluoride was first identified as a benefit in teeth health from explorations of why teeth in some communities were much better than in others, and identified the difference was fluoride. So we need to be careful of getting involved in having our own views around the benefits or otherwise.
It's only
And in
good if they're
terms of this,
drinking the water.
please let me finish. And we need to recognise that, or remember that this is not a desire of council to be involved in this field, but a direction from central government agency. And as you highlighted, that raises implications if council chooses not to proceed with this. So just bear those thoughts in mind. So you had another question, Tracy? Well, we haven't moved yet. So yeah. So have we exhausted the questions? Okay, so then we are, Tracy, if you want to move something, an alternate to the options that are before us, perhaps now's your time.
Thank you. And I did signal this in the workshop as well. And I notice in the notes here, council could consider opposing on the behalf of those that actually submitted against putting fluoride in our water. And my proposal would be that the Western Bay of Plenty District Council seeks an exemption from the requirements to add fluoride to the Athenry and Whara drinking water supply and prepares a submission to the Ministry of Health as such.
Okay, perhaps can you repeat that just so everybody takes it in?
Yeah, I can.
He's basically seeking an exemption.
Seeking an exemption, correct.
Well, yeah, we'll do that now before I see whether there's a seconder for that.
Do we know, I mean, there's natural fluoride in water supplies, right, to a degree. Do we know how much fluoride we have naturally in our water supplies? So do we keep that information? Yeah, I mean, because there are risks of overfluoridation, right? Quite known health risks of overfluoridation. So to add fluoride without knowing what's there now is actually, to me, a risk. So I mean, I think so we don't know.
Perhaps, Mr. Ellis, if you could more importantly indicate the concentration rate at which it is required to be added. I think you told me once before.
It's a low concentration rate. I think
very, in parts per million, like 1 part per million,
1 to 3 parts per million, I think it is. But it's I need to check on that. I've got that here, but not at the tip of my fingertips. In terms of the question about natural fluoride in the water supply, we're required to, as part of the implementation of this, to have a testing regime in place to show that the appropriate concentration is within the network. So that would pick up your question around natural fluoride in the water.
Okay, so Councillor Henry, you were wanting to second that proposal?
I did put a motion forward when I was talking, but there wasn't a seconder. So
sorry.
No, it wasn't asked for, sorry. You didn't ask whether there was a seconder for my motion.
Sorry.
And I am happy to support Councillor
Coxhead.
thank you. Her motion, yes. I would like some more time.
All right. Sorry. You wanting to speak to that? Sorry,
Can I have
all
another
right,
question?
we'll get the question out then.
Yes, I just wondered, have we consulted with tangata whenua on this? And is there a te mana o te wai statement about it that we need to take into account?
So no, we haven't specifically consulted, and so we would have deemed that the ministry would have undertaken that process and that consultation. No, in general, because it's their responsibility, because they're making that order.
Hang on, councillor Murray Benge has been waiting for a while, so I'm going to go back across the.
This is a subject I feel quite strongly about. Whether I'm in favour of fluoridation or not is absolutely irrelevant. In my experience, the community is divided on the issue. And one of the things I think that's sad about this Ministry of Health is that it's taken away the community's right to decide. And sometimes we need to actually ask people whether they want it or they don't want it. And when I did that in Waimari, the first person, and we had no opinion, we put it out there for the community with all the information, and it came out, and fluoridation. And the first person to call me was a doctor to thank me because people could self-medicate. But sir, we do have a tooth problem, and the amount of money that we're going to have to spend on introducing this and supervising it, testing it, we would be able to buy toothbrushes for every child in the district and provide them with toothpaste, and we'd do a jolly good job. So I agree. Councillor Coxhead's motion is one that says, please listen to us. The submissions that came in were passionate and people felt so strongly about the subject, and you cannot ignore that. So, sir, I'm happy to support the recommendation it is, because we didn't have anything else before us.
Thank you. I'm not sure where I'm going next. I think I'll go to councillor Henry. You're finished. Okay, councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, I won't be supporting the, is it an amendment? No, it's the amendment, is it, to this?
It's an alternative
To answer,
because we hadn't moved
yeah,
either of these.
to answer councillor Joyce's question, in Wellington, there is 0.1 milligrams naturally occurring in the Wellington water supply. Wellington have water. Health Department recommend 0.7 to 1. So 1/7 of the recommended rate is already in the water in Wellington before they add anything to it. If people feel so strongly about drinking fluoridated water in the Western Bay of Plenty, they can actually do the district a big help by connecting up their rainwater roofs to a tank and reticulating their house. That would supply them with water, or move to the 5,000 properties in our district that, sorry, and more than that, about 5,000, 6,000 properties that don't have council water anyway. I think you're in that, he's in that. There's probably a number around, James is in it. There's a number who don't receive council water already. So those are options that can be done if you feel that strongly, and you'll actually be doing the district a big favour in not having to put down more bores and more reservoirs, because you'll be actually collecting your own water supply. And this was raised at Smart Growth the other day about tangata whenua's concerns about the limitations of water. Well, water is plentiful in this district. It falls at the rate of 1.6 metres a year in Te Puna and 1.2 in Tauranga. Ample water for people to have unfluoridated water supply if they so choose.
Okay, so we've got a few more, and we've accommodated you quite a bit. What do you want? Have you got a question you wanting to speak?
Well, I'm just saying, in the Western Bay, we don't have that luxury of being able to do that if we want to be careful about what we drink and what's in the water, because around me, I've got 3 avocado orchards, 2 kiwi fruit orchards. They're constantly sending me messages about the stuff that they're putting into the air on a regular basis when it's time to be spraying those orchards. So the water I thought I was going to get from the council was going to be the stuff that I could drink.
Need to be very careful about that, and I wouldn't want to go off track. But just because you get a notification that they're spraying doesn't mean there's anything landing on your roof.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, point of order, Mr. Chairman? Can I ask Councillor Coxhead to repeat her resolution, please? And also, and perhaps just ask the question of her, as in what does she envisage, or what process is if the ministry come back and say no? Because I don't have, keep having votes on this every couple of weeks or whatever. So perhaps you can repeat your motion first, please.
So the option I'm proposing is that the Western Bay of Plenty District Council seeks an exemption from the requirements to add fluoride to the Ethering and Whara drinking water supply and prepares a submission to the Ministry of Health as such. I guess, should that be declined, well, that's it then really, isn't it? Or could we, I don't know, maybe we could go back again. I'm not sure.
My question is that if that is declined, then we haven't actually answered that point, option 1 or 2. So I'm just wondering if we need an option 1 or 2 that backs up your request.
So why would we decide that now?
So from a staff perspective, because we're putting budgets into the annual plan to either plan for delivery, we either need to know, is the budget going in, is the budget not? So it would be option 1 or option 2 with your amendment to that option
So
would
if
be probably a better solution for this.
So if my amendments it gets voted, then basically you're saying what we should do now is follow it up with another one, either 1 or 2. Well, yeah, I guess.
I have a question over here, all right?
Not do an option 3.
That's what we're working on right at this moment, councillor. So
I would say,
think
yeah.
I didn't exhaust all the people who wanted to speak before Mr. Wickers, councillor Wickers.
Yeah, so I oppose the fluoridation on principle, and that it just overrides informed consent, that it's a medication that gets delivered to people and they have to take it. And it's in the Bill of Rights to decline any medical treatment. So on that principle, I can't support us delivering medication to people that they have. It's coming in their water. They would then have to go and buy bottled water if they didn't want to take it.
Thank you for that. Alan would have been wanting to say something too.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I also look at this and think I'm totally opposed to mass medication now. We have it at least in 2 cases at present. We have folic acid now in all our bread and flour, etc. And then in salt we have iodine. And that's at least 2. Okay, people can say, not a problem. Well, frankly, I do know of people that have a problem with folic acid, for instance. I just solidly believe that it is something, as a youngster, I remember my mother supplying me with fluoride tablets. In other words, yes, you can manage it yourself. They could do better, and probably even over a reasonable period make a far better job of this, let alone the fact that I guess I'd hate to get into it, but sugar and all the other aspects that come into this whole thing about tooth decay, which we're not discussing. So to me, sir, I'm prepared to very much back the motion put before us, but if the councillors wish to withdraw it and go to option 2, I'm very much still in favour of that.
Okay, councillor Joyce, and then I'm going to come to Mr. Ellis, if I could please, and ask you to comment after that on the process of where we're up to and the requirements in terms of the government request that we proceed with this. But we'll go to Rodney first.
I mean, you might be able to answer one of my questions, the 57,500 or whatever it is in there. What happens if we take this path, which I'm comfortable with, then where does that leave us? Because presumably we're doing that work because we need to get it done to meet the deadline. So I'll be interested to know what that work was for and what the funding is. I still have a concern that there's a lot of people campaigning on this, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong. there is a little bit of misinformation. I was told yesterday that it's not recommended for children under 6 to have fluoridated toothpaste. Well, certainly my under 6-year-old has been recommended to have fluoridated toothpaste. So there's a lot of information. So what do I do as an ex-journo when I get confronted by alternative information? I go to some what I hope to be reasonably independent sources. There is certainly an issue in certain parts of the world, according to the WHO, where there's too much fluoride already in the water, which is why I'd like to know what the natural occurring level is here, not in Wellington, because Wellington is really not relevant. It's a different water source. And also, Harvard Public Health magazine, which Harvard University is reasonably well respected. Countries that do not fluoridate their water have also seen big drops in the rates of cavities. I'm not going to pretend to be a dentist or an expert, but there are serious studies being done that are coming down on both sides. And it's really, really hard because we're not in a position to judge this, but it's not just us. I mean, go through Europe. There's a big block of countries from the Nordics right through to Italy, all through Germany, that do not fluoridate their water. These are seriously big and well-organized countries. So, I do think we need to push back and say, guys, you've got to give us more justification than just what you've given us so far. What we've heard, and I'm not getting at Gary, because is that, well, the health department must be checking these things. Well, actually, no, we need to push back and say, well, what is your evidence? And I do think we need to know what the natural level is, because it may find we're already doing 1.5 parts per million without even doing anything.
So you've already heard that the requirement is that it's kept within a band as the
But some natural sources are actually above that band already.
Yeah, well, I'm sure council will be doing that work.
You should do it before you spend any money.
All right, well, I'm going to ask Mr. Ellis to give a bit of an explanation before we have a voting from an informed position.
Yep. Probably just in terms of the process. So we've applied to the ministry for funding for the 2 plants that they've required us to put fluoride into. They're now considering, and we haven't had a decision yet, that the additional 2 plants in that Western Supply Zone gets fluoride as well. So we're waiting for a decision on that. The first 2 plants require it to be in place by mid-2025. And our strategy was, as we've explained previously, is that we would be putting the contract in place April, May, June next year. So, and then the physical works would happen in the 24-25 financial year to meet that deadline. So a year to put it in place, needs a contract in place May next year. If the additional 2 plants are required to be put fluoride in as well, then it's likely the implementation deadline will be pushed out a year, so out to 2026, because physically and with the resourcing, it's probably only 2 plants a year that would be getting upgraded, because there's other upgrades that happen at the same time to future-proof the plants. So that would be the timing. So if you were to seek an exemption from the ministry, then you've actually got time now to do that, but we would continue working towards that timeframe to be able to meet it. And one thing perhaps as part of seeking that exemption, we could see if we can have the ministry come and present to the council on the topic.
And so if this motion before us was to succeed, would that mean that council would then withdraw its application for the funding? But either way, it would have no impact on rates for this current year in terms of our annual plan discussion today.
It won't have any impact on rates for the next year, irrespective of which decision you make.
Yeah.
Would we withdraw the application? Probably not. I'd probably go, we need to continue with the application because it's a one-off chance to get the funding towards the implementation as opposed to being rate funded, because there's no guarantee that future plants will be funded from the ministry. So it might be that a resolution is something along the lines of that. You do the objection, and just seek the ministry to come in and speak. But in parallel, we continue with preparation. Subsequently, depending on the response from the ministry, you can make a subsequent decision to stop the process.
Thank you for that. So we've got a couple more questions. Are they over here? Anne?
Just based on the information that what you've just explained, Gary, and I'm just wondering if we, and bearing in mind if you did look to have the other two plants with fluoridation, and I realise that this option, issues and options has come up from a submission that's come through the annual plan, but across the wider community, seeing that we then, if we went with one, two would be done and then another two would be done, and it would appear that we had consulted on the first two, but we're not consulting on the other two. So, and bearing in mind that if people can see what I'm talking about, I think it's better that we do wait and go with this the motion to actually take our time and wait and see what we get back from the ministry.
So I've got Murray and then Don, and then I'm looking to the motion and see where we
Yes,
get.
through you, Mr. Chair. I thought I heard you say just now, Gary, that neither option has an impact on our rates, but it's got 57.
Yeah. So that is for start to implement the contract. So getting the contract ready for tender. But if we don't do the contract, that will just change the debt balance in the water supply account by 57,000. It's not going to materially affect the rates. I think if you're thinking from a rates perspective, withdrawing the application for subsidy is a bigger risk for your funding than the 57,000.
Councillor Thwaites.
Gary, I've got the Tauranga City website in front of me, and that fluoridation of Tauranga water supply must be implemented by July 2024. So the answer is this good stuff will be available in 13 months for us to drink. That's great. Can we bring containers to take home? And is that actually going to go to all three plants? So 140,000 people in Tauranga City going to be drinking fluoridated water?
If that's what the requirement is, then
Maybe I'll have to move to Bethlehem.
that's what will be happening. Yep.
Okay.
And
Can I stay a councillor if I live in Bethlehem? Yep.
All right, we've given this a good thrashing. And you've heard all the points. You need to be very careful, I think, how you vote here, that you're voting in terms of the process and the annual plan and not your personal views about fluoridation or otherwise. Yeah, we're coming to that. It's not an option 3, it's the motion that is before us, which essentially is an option 3. But so could we have that repeated, please, before? Oh. Okay, so it reads as of now that Western Bay of Plenty District Council seeks an exemption from the requirements to add fluoride to the Athenry and Whara drinking water supply and prepares a submission to the Ministry of Health as such. That the Ministry of Health be invited to speak to Council regarding requirements to add fluorine to drinking water, and that Council progress the water fluoridation process with the Ministry of Health.
Funding, yeah.
Well, that's the 57,000. Well, the funding application for that's the bit you're referring to.
We have those words added there because we're not pursuing fluoridation, we're pursuing the funding application.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
You can before I put them.
Just for the sake of staff, if this goes through, what will be the process to prepare that submission? Will we workshop it, or how will we do that? Because it's not fair on the staff to make them do this.
Good point, thank you.
With regards to that, I don't know what the process is. So we'll have to talk to Ministry of Health and work that out, and then we'll come back to you if the timeframes align. Otherwise, we'll sort something out.
Councillor Sol.
Sir, so if this motion proceeds and goes through and is accepted there, and the Department of Health, or whatever their flaming name is these days, decides that there's no process to actually be able to apply to withdraw, where do we sit with this within our annual plan?
Exactly.
Because is it then going to by default revert back to option one?
Yeah,
That's
well,
what
council,
we're saying.
Mr. Ellis pointed out that council, their intent would be to still apply for the funding,
Sure.
but nothing's going to happen till, when did you say, March, April? Yeah. And so we'll manage that process depending on how the situation unfolds between now and then,
So we can have another bite at the cherry.
if we need to.
Mhm.
Right, so I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
No. So I think we probably should ask for a show of hands again. Division,
Division.
okay. Those who supported the motion, please raise your hands.
Yeah, thank you.
One, two,
Is your hand up?
So
Yeah.
obviously,
Grant, is your hand up?
Yeah.
Please clearly put your hand up.
yeah,
Look, 10 are up and 2 are down, okay? Do you want to
Yeah.
cut to the chase?
pretty simple. All right,
2.
two
What about
brothers.
us now? Rodney got it voted before. Thanks, you, John. No, I'm happy. Man. I'm just gonna
All
find
right.
my containers to get this good water.
So the disadvantages are listed there as well.
Moving to town.
Okay, we've got that one behind us. We move to community projects.